Welcome back to Badass Websites here in BOMU. We are currently in Module 1, Website Basics, and Lesson 5, Your Website Design. In this lesson, you will learn 3 rules to follow when choosing your design and important do's and don'ts of website design. An important note, your design is more than just the look of your site. It supports your customer experience, messaging, brand personality, and SEO. So let's talk about the 3 rules to follow. The first rule to follow is templates for the win. If there is a template that you can use for the design of your site, use it. If you don't have the budget for a designer, use a pre-designed template that's created by a professional designer. You'll get a professional looking website without the cost. So these are really, really great templates for the win. The message rules all. So your messaging should trump any design element on your site. It should be the star of your website. So we need to keep that in mind. And we want to keep it cohesive. We'll talk about that more in a second. So let's talk about rule number 1, templates for the win. If you can't hire a designer, find a great template that supports your messaging and your strategy. So most platforms out there, whether it's WordPress, Wix, Squarespace, even Kajabi, they all have pre-made templates created by third-party designers and sold independently. You might have to check with Kajabi. I know they have some native templates, but I believe once you're at a specific tier, as of the recording of this video, if you're on a specific tier, you can have someone go in and either design your site or you can buy pre-made templates to upload on your site. A good theme or template will provide you with the expert designer aesthetics with the ability to change colors, fonts, logos, and images to suit your own brand. So when you're looking for a template, make sure you're keeping in mind your business type, your strategy when perusing templates, and the page structure. Basically, you want to make sure whatever template you choose supports what you're wanting to do with your website and your marketing strategy that you want your website to support. All right. Great template resource is Creative Market. I've used creativemarket.com for a lot of different WordPress sites. We use Elementor and WordPress. I've used Divi, but even Squarespace and Wix, I believe they have designers that put pre-made templates that look beautiful that you can purchase and upload to your site and customize to suit your own tastes. All right, rule number 2, the message rules all. Make sure your design does not interfere with your messaging. So using busy design elements can actually take away from your overall messaging. Make sure you're choosing your design elements, fonts, and colors in a way that won't detract from your message. For example, if things are difficult to see or read, people can't follow your messaging. So you want to make sure your design is supporting your messaging and not overshadowing it. We definitely recommend you look at Badass Branding here in BOMU, where our very own designer extraordinaire, Patrick Sesko, talks about some important branding elements. So keep that in mind as well. Rule number 3, keep it cohesive. Keep your design consistent and cohesive throughout your website. This is for a very specific purpose. It will help people recognize your brand throughout the user experience, because you don't want someone to click through to another page on your site and wonder if they're still on the same website or not. So I've been to websites in the past where they changed their design or structure or branding even from page to page, and you just felt like you were going to a bunch of different websites that weren't even related. But in reality, it was one website. So you want to make sure you're keeping your branding cohesive throughout your website. Important note, when thinking of your design, there are some important do's and don'ts to follow, and we're going to cover all of them here, or as many as I can in this lesson. First do, like I said, use pre-designed website themes and design templates whenever possible. These will typically keep your design cohesive, like we said, and it'll keep it responsive. So most of these professionally designed themes and templates that you can use are responsive. And what responsive means is that it will respond by changing the structure of your page based on the device that's being used to look at it. So it will change the structure based on the desktop, tablet, and mobile view. It'll have a version for each one. And that's really important because your website traffic can be using one of those 3 devices. You want to make sure your website will look good on each one. Another do, follow the template design. If you use a template, altering the design too much by adding too much text to a particular container or pictures in the wrong orientation and size can make a website look very poorly designed and can potentially leave a large blank spot on your website in various places. So keep rows and columns consistent. So when you're designing a website, I'm talking specifically about using a pre-designed template. Don't alter the template too much. If you have a block of text that the designer put in there, even if it's filler text, you want to keep the similar word count because that block will expand if you put more words to it, and it will throw off the sizing of the columns and the rows. So you want to make sure you're not messing too much with the design. So you just follow the structure that they're giving you. Do hire a designer if you have it in the budget. So if you feel uncomfortable or overwhelmed by website building tools, even with a template, if you feel overwhelmed by updating your theme or creating new pages on your website, hiring a designer can be helpful if it's in the budget. Quick warning, hiring a designer can be a great place to start if it's in the budget, but knowing how to use your website is your responsibility. Okay, as a business owner, you need to know how to use the systems in your business. That doesn't mean you have to become a website development expert, but you need to know how to go update something on a page or create a new page as much as possible so that if you have team turnover, if your developer or designer is not available, you know how to get in and function well in your own business. Okay, so what's the difference? Let's talk about the difference between a developer and a designer. A developer codes the function of your website. A designer creates the look of your website. Sometimes developers are also designers, but just because they're a designer does not mean they're a developer. So sometimes they're both, but you want to specify because just because they can design a website doesn't mean that they can build one. All right, next do, make it responsive. So I mentioned that earlier. Responsive means it responds well to different screen sizes. So you'll want to make sure whatever theme or layout or template you use, that it's responsive and shows up well on mobile devices. Super important. All right, do not try to design your website from scratch. Most of you are probably like, I wouldn't do that anyway, but just in case you are feeling brave, save yourself the headache. Unless you want to become a professional designer, don't worry about designing your website from scratch. Even with a drag and drop builder like Elementor or Divi, if you're using WordPress, do not try to build a website from scratch. Think about Kajabi. Kajabi is super easy to use, but building a website from scratch in Kajabi is going to be as hard as doing a WordPress website with Elementor, which is a drag and drop builder. You want to start with the theme and go from there, okay? Especially if you don't know what you're doing. In fact, most designers don't code websites from scratch anymore. They use pre-made frameworks that they work from. So use a template or a theme, a pre-designed theme as your framework and go from there. All right, do not alter the design of a website, theme, or template. So that means don't try to move things around on the template. Don't try to put something in one place that belongs in another, because it's specifically designed the way it is usually to be responsive, and when you change that design, it can alter the responsiveness. Okay. Most pre-made design or pre-designed themes or layouts are set up for you to adjust fonts, colors, and images, But messing too much with the design elements outside of that can make a really good looking theme look really terrible. So if you don't know what you're doing, try not to mess with the design too much outside of adding your own fonts, colors, logos, images, and copy. Do not use the wrong image orientation, okay? Using a landscape oriented image where there should be a portrait oriented image will negatively impact your design. I'll show you an example right here, okay? On the left is portrait, on the right is landscape. If a template or design calls for a square image, use a square image. If it calls for a portrait-oriented image, use a portrait-oriented image, etc., or it can throw off the design. Do not use images in place of text, okay? Never use images in place of text, meaning don't create an image in Canva that has text in it and use that in lieu of a paragraph section of text on your website or a header, okay, or a heading. Having actual text on your website is important for screen readers for the visually impaired as well as SEO. So this can actually impact your website accessibility and it can impact SEO. Headers are very, very important. Text needs to be able to be crawled by Google. So Google has these bots that will crawl your website. It will read everything on your website, and that's how it's going to rank you. And there are some designers, I use air quotes, air quote designers will just go onto your website and create a whole section on your website that's just an image they created in Canva and put that image on your site. Do not do that. That is not good practices. All right, quick warning. Putting text directly on top of an image without a box overlay can lead to readability problems. Some examples. In this image, you can see this very busy, beautiful landscape image, but it has black text on it and it's really difficult to read when the text is just right on top of the image. Same thing if we switched the text from black to white, still very difficult to read because the background image is pretty busy. So if you put an overlay behind the text, you can overlay the entire image, or like I did here, just a section of the image, and you can actually read the text more easily. And then here's another example of using a left aligned box and having the text appear over the box, the overlay box, and that is going to show up much better on your website and it's not going to produce readability issues. So that is pretty much it for this lesson. We covered 3 rules to follow when choosing your design, and we covered important do's and don'ts of website design. In the next lesson, you will learn important things to think of when it comes to accessibility and legal stuff to keep in mind for your website. So this is going to be a very important lesson in lesson 6. Don't miss it. I'll see you there.